Hello, everyone. My name is Grant Minix, and I'm a policy associate with the Council of State Governments. And welcome you to the Interstate Compact for Dietitians Compact Kickoff Meeting. We're glad all of you are here today. This meeting is being recorded, and we will have a recording of this meeting afterwards available for everyone's use. Get started. As I said, my name is Grant Minix, and I'm joined here by the Deputy Policy Director for the National Center of Interstate Compacts, Matt Schaefer. And as we get started, Matt's going to give us a little introduction on the National Center for Interstate Compacts and the Council of State Governments.
Great. Thank you, Grant. Good afternoon, everyone. So pleased that you're using your time to be with us this afternoon, and we're thrilled with the amount of interest that we've received in this project so far. And welcome to all of the members of the profession, the licensees, as well as the regulators that we've engaged with so far, and other members of the Academy. So just as a little bit of background, the Council of State Governments is a nonpartisan membership association for state government officials elected and appointed. We've been around since the 1930s. Our headquarters is in Lexington, Kentucky, and we serve all three branches of state government with nonpartisan policy research, leadership development programming, and hosting convenings and conferences to bring our members together to learn from one another, share best practices, share what's working in the states. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the National Center for Interstate Compacts, which is a policy program housed within the Council of State Governments. We've been working on interstate compacts really since our founding in the 1930s, and all of that work was formalized in 2004 when CSG founded the National Center for Interstate Compacts. And we'll talk a little bit later about what exactly an interstate compact is, but at a very high level, we help states collaborate, learn from one another, pursue agreements with one another around issues that cross state lines. And so we're all about states collaborating and working together to solve policy problems. And that's the core of what we do at the National Center of Interstate Compacts. CSG has been involved with developing all of the active occupational licensing compacts that are out there. There's compacts for a lot of health-related professions, nursing, physical therapy, medicine. We'll show you the list in a later slide, but CSG has been the primary facilitator of developing those compacts and working to get them passed in the states and standing up the governance structure once the compact is implemented. So we've got a lot of history and expertise in this area, and we're thrilled to be working with the Academy on this compact for licensed dietitians. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Grant to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Matt. This project is made possible through a cooperative agreement between the Council of State Governments and the United States Department of Defense. A representative here today to talk about some of the impetus and importance of this project for military spouses. Is here with us today, Tammy Peralt from the U.S. Department of Defense State Liaison Office. Tammy, I'll hand it over to you.
Grant and Matt, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today on behalf of the Department of Defense and military spouses across the world who depend on licensure in order to maintain their occupation. For those of you that aren't familiar, over 34% of military spouses require an occupational license in order to do their important work every day. And because of that, the Department of Defense is honored to be able to have this cooperative agreement with the Council of State Governments to ensure that military spouses can participate in occupational licensure compacts like this one as they move across state lines. Again, my name is Tammy Perot, and I'm the Defense State Liaison out in the Northwest region. But I'm not just a member of the Defense State Liaison Office, I'm also a military spouse. And I can't tell you the number of times I've moved or had my neighbors say to me, you know what, I'm just not going to take up my occupation during this move because licensure is going to take me a while, and it's going to take me a while to find that job. In our increasingly mobile society, we owe it to military spouses and everyone in these occupations to be able to move to find the best opportunities and to be able to practice through telehealth. And occupational licensure compacts provide those opportunities. Just a couple weeks ago, on September 22nd, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, put out a memorandum titled Taking Care of Our Families and People. In this 3-page memorandum, he specifically highlighted the importance of occupational licensure compacts and this partnership with the Council of State Governments. We can't be more appreciative of everyone who's come to join us today in this discussion as we kick off another opportunity to improve licensure for our military spouses. We often say we recruit the service member, but we retain the family. And retaining our families by ensuring that they can maintain their occupations is so important for the readiness and the future of the military force. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to make comments today.
Thank you so much, Tammy. As she mentioned, this is a very important project for military spouses, but DoD was also very grateful to allow us to open this up to more than just military spouses and the entire dietitians community. And as a result of that, we had this cooperative agreement and took in applications from numerous national organizations, many who have applied, and we selected just some of the most pertinent and important ones for not just the military spouse community, but the communities as a whole. And we were very fortunate to receive an application and accept it from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, who came to us with this very important issue. And we know this is a huge issue in the dietitians community. So as a result, we're very glad as we jumpstart this project to have Ellen Shanley here, the president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So Ellen, thank you for being here, and wanted to get your perspective on the importance for licensure portability and an interstate compact for dietitians.
Great. Thank you so much, Grant, Matt, and Tammy. And good afternoon to everyone. I'm Ellen Shanley, a registered dietitian nutritionist and the 2022-2023 president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. On behalf of the Academy and all registered dietitian nutritionists, excuse me, I am excited that the Department of Defense has selected the Academy to work with the Council of State Governments, regulators, legislators, and other stakeholders in exploring an interstate professional licensure compact on behalf of RDNs. The possibility of a licensure compact is a win-win for our profession. A compact would provide greater protection for consumers and patients across the country and enhance their access to qualified licensed practitioners. For several years, the Academy has been looking closely at the viability of an interstate professional licensure compact for RDNs. We have engaged committees, task forces, the Commission on Dietetic Registration, and the Board of Directors in partnership with our staff and legal counsel. Our goal is to develop a compact that creates new professional opportunities for RDNs to practice in states and adopts common qualifications and other standards to reduce the time and expense it takes for an RDN to become licensed in each state they practice. The COVID-19 pandemic underscored the need for immediate and flexible solutions to nutrition care and resulted in an explosion in remote practice. Initial data gathered from Academy surveys during the pandemic showed dramatic increases in both the number of RDNs who are practicing via telehealth and the percentage of encounters that are completed remotely. Given the popularity and success of increased access to nutrition services through telehealth, RDNs and the entities we work with recognize and anticipate that consumers' demand for telehealth will continue to grow. For that reason, RDNs need modern licensure solutions that facilitate practice across state lines and enable us to take advantage of new professional opportunities without sacrificing public safety. Every state sets its own requirements for licensure. Often these requirements include what we feel can be excessive and unnecessary documentation for RDNs in good standing. For example, many states require information from each state in which an RDN is licensed to be sent manually, not electronically, which further slows down the licensing process. In many states, we have synergistic opportunities to modernize existing licensure laws and other regulations of the profession we can undertake concurrently with compact efforts. We can update them to ensure they reflect the height of RDN's current professional scope of practice and establish statutory qualifications, enabling laws to grow in tandem with changes to national standards set by CDR and the Accreditation Council for Education and Dietetics, the only recognized accreditation and credentialing bodies for nutrition and dietetics. This project is funded by the Department of Defense as a way to make life and work easier for military families that include RDNs who are married to members of the armed forces on active duty. I think it's important to highlight some of the challenges this group has shared with us. Many of these struggles are universal, but others disproportionately impact military families. Frequent location changes negatively affect both job continuity and client continuity. Losses of personal and professional networks and the uncertainties associated with any major life change can make it difficult for anyone to obtain a job after relocation. This is even more true for military spouses, given the short amounts of time they may live in an area, the involuntary nature of the change, and the limited employment options for RDNs whose spouses relocate, and in particular, when the permanent change of station is overseas. Current licensure laws complicate military spouses' abilities to maintain existing clients or take on new ones because of the need to become licensed in so many states. So-called fast-track licensure language that has been inserted into individual licensure laws sounds appealing and can help in some situations. But military spouses who are RDNs report it can still take as long as 6 months to obtain a license. This, of course, is just lost income. In addition to the benefits that a well-designated and viable compact could bring to military spouses and to all RDNs, a compact would also greatly benefit patients and the healthcare system. It would enhance critical consumer protections as states better communicate with one another about issues, including disciplinary records, applicant qualifications, and private credentials. I encourage all Academy members to stay involved throughout this process. Join our online affinity group, which meets the third Friday of every month from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. These meetings are a great place to get caught up, ask questions, and learn from other members. We will keep members updated through Academy communications, including Eat Right Weekly and Public Policy Weekly News. Individual practice questions can often be answered by visiting the Academy's website, And you can join our weekly licensure office hours held every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can always submit questions to licensure@eatright.org. The Academy's policy and advocacy team will connect you to the information you need. We know it will take a lot of work to develop a compact that makes sense for our profession, and it will be even more challenging to get the agreement passed in states across the country. While success is not guaranteed, we are committed to exploring and assessing a compact. I want everyone on this call and all RGNs and NDTRs to know we will never stop fighting and working for you. We are thrilled to kick off this exploration process and to have continued engagement with our partners, members, and stakeholders. We know that many of you are eager for more information or details. We will be reviewing the questions that have been submitted and compiling answers that will be made available soon on the Academy's website. We're sorry that we can't answer these individually today, but are excited to have so many of you engaged and interested in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and thank you for being here with us today. And thanks to the Academy for all your work on this so far, and we look forward to this process going forward. So I'm sure many of you are probably asking now, well, what is an interstate compact, and what does it do exactly? So Matt's here to help us kind of walk through this. We have a very in-depth, pretty good presentation on interstate compacts. We call it Interstate Compacts 101, just to help everybody get a little more comfortable with this, the idea of a compact and the process of developing one. So Matt.
Thanks, Grant, and thanks again to our speakers, and just thrilled at the amount of excitement, interest in this project so far. So like Grant said, we're just going to walk through kind of the basics of what is an interstate compact. And thank you all for everyone who submitted questions prior to the meeting. We're going to go and answer a few of those that were most prevalent that we received, but feel free to continue to submit questions in the question and answer function in Zoom if there's anything that comes up that sparks your interest that we don't directly address during the Q&A section. So let's start here. What is an interstate compact? So when you hear the term interstate compact, think legal contract. This is a legal contract between two or more states. There are compacts out there just between two states. There's compacts between regions of states, and then there's national compacts that all 50 states are a member of. And these contracts are legislatively enacted. And so a common question that we get is, how does my state actually join a compact? And the answer to that is it's actually done through the state legislature. So your state passes a bill to join the compact. There's a model piece of legislation that we're endeavoring to develop, and your state joins the compact by passing that model legislation that says, I agree to all the provisions here, and I'm signing my state up to participate in this legal agreement between other states. And so these compacts, historically, we've seen have been used by states to cooperatively address shared problems, while simultaneously allowing states to maintain their sovereignty and allow states to respond with one unified voice. So this is not a federal government hand down. This is the states coming together and collectively developing their own solution, states collaborating and working together rather than something being legislated to them. They're able to create their own solution. So you can see here the picture of the driver's license. Sorry, Grant, if we could go back a slide. Picture of the driver's license on your screen there. And it's probably the most common example that normally resonates with folks when we talk about interstate compacts. So rather than the federal government saying, hey, states, you guys need to recognize each other's driver's licenses, states came together and developed the driver's license compact, which allows you as a motor vehicleist to hold one state license in your primary state of residence and then drive anywhere you want across the country. And these occupational licensing compacts really function in a similar manner where it eliminates the need for holding separate state licenses and really streamlines that so that you just have to maintain one license and you can work in multiple states simultaneously. The next slide, we've got a little bit more information on occupational licensing compacts. So like I mentioned on the previous slide, the primary thing that these compacts do is facilitate multi-state practice. So think about the example of the traveling nurse who might have a new assignment every month or every 2 months. And rather than having to get relicensed in every state that the nurse moves to, she can use the nursing compact to practice in any state that is a member of the compact. Also think about the scenario of somebody who lives on a state border. Maybe they hold a license in the state where they live, but they're right near a state border and they want to have the ability to access that other neighboring state. The compact allows for that sort of mobility to just maintain one state license and work in multiple states at one time. This is also a huge benefit for telepractice. We've worked with a lot of behavioral health professions like psychology and social work and counseling, professions that utilize telepractice quite a bit, and the benefit that's provided through a compact for telepractice is immense. You are now in a situation with a compact where you only have to hold one state license and you can practice in as many states as are a member of the compact in a telecommunicative means via a computer or phone or something like that. It's just expanding access to care. It's expanding your ability to market yourself in new states as a practitioner. And so it just provides an immense amount of benefit, and particularly this point around telepractice, which is becoming so prevalent. We've seen this throughout COVID, just the prevalence of telepractice in healthcare professions. So facilitating multi-state practice. We also often talk about how compacts help maintain or improve public health and safety. And this is largely down to just the amount of information sharing that occurs amongst compact member states. So the member states that join the compact share information related to licensees, education information, anything around discipline of a licensee. And so as a regulator, you now have access to a lot more information than maybe you currently have access to. And this is really just raising the bar of regulation and increasing access to information that regulators have access to make public health and safety decisions. And then lastly, compacts preserve state authority over professional licensing. And this is an important point to emphasize. By joining the compact, your state is agreeing to accept practitioners from other states, but the compact does not do anything with scope of practice. The state still retains control over their Practice Act. They still retain control over the activity that can occur within their state's borders. So for example, let's say I'm a social worker and I'm licensed in my home state of Kentucky, and I'm working across the river in the state of Indiana. When I'm in Indiana, I have to abide by Indiana's laws and rules that govern social work. So if there's certain things that I'm allowed to do in Kentucky, but maybe I'm not allowed to do in Indiana, I have to know what those things are and abide by those things. So in that sense, it really does preserve a state's authority over the licensed profession that is occurring within their state. So you can see here just how popular these compacts have been in recent years. Over 230 pieces of legislation just in the past 6 legislative sessions. There's 9 professions that currently have these, and we'll go over the list on the next slide. But almost all states have adopted one of these compacts, and the majority have passed at least 3. So states are growing increasingly familiar with these as portability mechanisms, and I think that'll just continue to grow as more and more professions pursue these compacts. Okay, so here is the list of all of the active interstate compacts. So you can see nursing and medicine lead the way with 39 member states. They're the oldest compacts. The nursing compact was written in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they recently revised it in 2015. And then the medical compact and all these other professions followed suit ever since 2016. So the compacts on the right side of your screen that have a little bit lower membership, counseling, APRN, these are really just newer. There's nothing about these compacts that make them less popular in the states. They've only been out to the legislature for 2 legislative sessions, and so that's why their membership is a little bit lower. But these things do take time to build momentum and get a good number of states on board. You can see nursing's been around for 6 years and they still only have 39 member states. So there's a lot of work that goes into the state enactment part of this process, and it's not as if we can just snap our fingers and all 50 states will join the compact. Because again, think back to the beginning, this is a decision that the legislature is making. So the legislature is the body that's responsible for signing your state up to join this agreement. Okay, so here's just a heat map of where these things are most popular across the country. You can see kind of the Midwest, Southeast is kind of the hottest part of the country in terms of states who are really friendly to these licensing compacts. I will shout out Utah and Delaware. Utah and Delaware are the only states that have passed all 9 of the occupational licensing compacts. But there's a lot of states that are close behind. Alabama has passed 8. Maryland has passed 8. West Virginia has passed 8. So there's a lot of states that have passed quite a few of these. Interestingly, there are a few states that have not passed any. So most notably, Massachusetts, New York, and California have not passed any of these compacts yet. And I think there's a lot of state politics involved with that fact. And CSG has been working hard to get those states on board with these licensing compacts, but to no avail as of quite yet. So I anticipate that they'll probably be late adopters for this compact, but you never know. They've been hesitant to join these in the past, but can't say for sure with this compact for dietitians. So next slide, Grant. Okay, so like has been mentioned several times throughout this presentation so far, we're thrilled to work with the Department of Defense on this initiative to fund all of these new licensing compacts. You can see here the list of professions that we are currently working with, and it's just a stellar list of professions that CSG is thrilled to be involved with. So you can see dietitians there, but also dentistry, massage therapy, school psychology, cosmetology, social work, teaching, and physicians associates. And the PA compact is the only one that I'll call out as not being funded by this DoD cooperative agreement that is being developed separately through an agreement that CSG has with the Federation of State Medical Boards. But all of these are new compacts that are going to be finalized in the next couple of years. And so we're really excited to grow this network of professions that have utilized compacts for licensure portability. Next slide. Okay, so we've talked kind of broadly about some of the benefits here, but want to narrow in and talk a little bit more specifically. So benefits to practitioners. for these licensing compacts. Obviously, the primary benefit that we're talking about here is mobility, whether that's mobility of changing your state of residence, if you're mobile, like the military spouse population that has been mentioned, or if you live near a state border and you just want to have access to multiple states that are around you. The compact facilitates the process for you to streamline that whole process and not have to get individual licenses in all of those states. I talked about leveraging advances in telepractice and technology advancements. So this provides a ton of benefit for licensees to be able to see patients from all over the country and not have to navigate every state specific licensing process in order to do so. So I don't know the specifics of dietetics yet, but I from my base level knowledge, I do understand that telepractice is becoming more and more prevalent in the profession. So I think it's something that will certainly be talked about in a lot of our development meetings and something that we'll be sure to address in the compact. And then lastly, and Tammy very eloquently made this point, these compacts really do support relocating military members and their families. Next slide. Okay, so benefits for licensing boards. These are regulatory instruments, and so it's important to have the buy-in of the licensing boards who are going to be implementing this compact. And so boards really like these primarily compacts often drive uniformity of licensure requirements. So we've seen in professions where maybe the standards aren't perfectly aligned across states that by developing a compact, oftentimes it does start to create uniformity of standards across state lines. So I can think about an example from the counseling compact, which requires a 60-hour master's degree for a licensed professional counselor. A lot of states were at 45 hours for their master's degree requirement. And so we've seen states bumping that up to 60 in order to meet the requirements in the compact. So in that sense, it really is creating uniformity and creating alignment amongst the states in terms of those initial licensure requirements. Number two, the compact develops a shared data system, and this is a massive benefit to licensing boards. So through the development of the model legislation, simultaneously, there's also the development of the compact data system, an information system that houses information about licensees who are utilizing the compact. And this is a necessary component to compact development because if people are going to be practicing across state lines without a license, the member states collectively need to be sharing information as much as possible about those licensees in terms of if there's any kind of investigations or discipline action that is being taken, that needs to be communicated to all of the member states that are in the compact. And so the data system is how that is achieved. And so boards really like this. They have access to much more information than they currently have access to. The compact dictates that states have to work together on investigations across state lines. And so it's really increasing the amount of collaboration, regulatory collaboration, and also increasing the amount of information that regulators have access to. And then lastly, it increases access to highly qualified practitioners. These things are used as a workforce tool, removing barriers to licensure, helping get people into the state who can fill shortage areas. We see this argument made a lot in regards to rural areas of states where maybe there's a practitioner shortage in a certain area, and maybe they can use the compact to do telepractice into those rural areas, or maybe they could more practice there in a more expedited manner via the compact. So it really is increasing access to highly qualified practitioners and helping states solve workforce shortages. Okay, and then states really like these. Again, I've made the point at the beginning, flexibility and autonomy. A lot of times the federal government likes to get involved in licensure, which is strictly an issue for the states. And compacts allow for this national framework to be developed where practitioners can be mobile while simultaneously allowing states to retain their sovereignty over their practice act, over the activity that occurs within their state, over the discipline that occurs within their state of licensees. And so from that sense, it really does maintain and strengthen state sovereignty. Enhances cooperation between states. This is a great benefit that states, particularly legislators, like to point to. And again, this is a workforce development tool, so strengthening labor markets and expanding the state's ability to protect public health and safety. This is a mechanism that allows for mobility while simultaneously keeps a high bar for public health and safety. A lot of times when talking about occupational licensing, you'll see a lot of discussion around deregulation or making it really easy for people to come and work in another state. And a lot of times there's unintended consequences with some of those actions that states are taking. And the compact develops a framework whereby we can facilitate mobility while not sacrificing the public protection aspect that is so important to legislators and regulators alike. Next slide. Okay, so we are ready to jump into the Q&A session. So like I said, we collected questions before the meeting, and we've got a few of those that we're ready to answer. Feel free to continue to ask questions in the Q&A function in Zoom. And like was mentioned earlier, the Academy will be collecting the questions that were submitted and providing answers to those. And so thank you all for your interest today, and I'll hand it back over to Grant, who's going to be facilitating our Q&A.
Thank you, Matt. I want to thank you all again for submitting your questions. Some of y'all did. A lot of these questions that we picked out 7 questions that are most pertinent to the point we're at in the compact development process. A lot of questions we can't answer just yet because we have groups that will come together and some experts from the profession to work on these issues and answer these questions for us. But a few of the major questions we've received, and I think some of the more ones we're seeing in the Q&A section too, we're going to ask here. Our first one is, when could the Interstate Compact for Dietitians begin to be enacted in states?
Yeah, great question, and a very common question that we often get, especially from licensees who are excited about this. When can I use this? And so CSG has a pretty robust process for developing these compacts that involve a number of stakeholders, involve a lot of collaboration amongst different stakeholder types in the profession. And so this is not an instance where we can just take the nursing compact and erase the word nursing and put dietitian in there, and that'll solve all of our problems. These things are uniquely created to fit the needs of the profession. And so because of that, they take time to develop, normally about 12 to 18 months to develop. And then there's the legislative piece as well, where states actually have to join the compact in order for it to be implemented. And so it's our hope that we'll have the model legislation ready for the 2024 legislative session. So this is the official kickoff of this initiative. And after that, we'll be working with the Academy and stakeholders within the profession to develop a framework for the compact and then actually draft the model legislation. And that'll be work that is ongoing the rest of this calendar year and likely through the remainder of 2023 as well. I'll also emphasize that once we have an initial draft of the compact developed, we always facilitate a lengthy public comment period where people can weigh in on specific provisions that were developed in the initial draft. So we normally have about 6 to 8 weeks of public comment where everybody will be able to submit their feedback and their thoughts about the compact, and then CSG will take all of that feedback and share it with our working groups and make it to the compact as necessary. So it's not as if there's going to be a scenario where this is the last you hear from us until the compact is finalized. There's going to be opportunity to participate in this process along the way, and particularly that public comment period where we'll be sharing out the compact far and wide amongst members of the profession.
Thank you, Matt. And the next question we have is a little bit of a long one, but from the experience of other professions that have interstate compacts, do we have an idea of what the cost to participate in the interstate compact for dietitians will be? Will it be more cost effective than paying licensure fees in multiple states?
Yes, another very common question that we get. And so there's a lot to this question. And I think it's helpful to break down the fees in two separate categories. So you've got your fee for the state to participate, and then you've got your fee for the licensee to participate. So there are some instances where a compact will say that a state has to pay an assessment or a membership fee in order to retain their membership in the compact. There's only 2 compacts out of the 9 that have that, nursing and psychology. All the other compacts do not assess the member states for their membership. So that's kind of one bucket of fees that people commonly ask about. The other bucket of fees is the fees for the licensee, for the practitioner. I think that's probably what this question is getting at. And it really depends on the model that makes sense for dietitians. So there's different ways that professions have handled this. Physical therapy adopted a model for their compact where you obtain what we call compact privileges, where you apply for and receive a privilege to work in an individual remote state that's a member of the compact. And so in this instance, the PT compact sets their fee at $45. So let's say you're licensed in one state and you want to work in 2 other states. So you would pay a total of $90. You'd have your licensing fee in the state where you live, and then you'd have the fee for the 2 remote state compact privileges. And in my experience, $45 is less than a fee for a full license. But I can't say that for certain in this profession in particular state. So it really just depends on the model that's adopted, and also depends on what your state currently requires, is if it'll be more cost efficient for maintaining multiple licenses. But I'll say that's the goal. We're trying to make this more cost efficient, and we're trying to make this easier for licensees, but there are fees associated with the compact, and that's largely just down to the fact that a lot of these state licensing boards are operating on a very thin budget, and there are major concerns that if they're no longer receiving revenue from out-of-state applicants, that they might not be financially viable in the future. And so states have the ability to set their own fee for the compact and set their own fee for whatever we end up issuing that allows the practitioner to be mobile, whatever we call it, a license or a privilege, and that's up to the profession to decide what that looks like. But that's a long-winded answer. In short, just to summarize everything I said, in terms of fees to the licensee, the goal is to minimize it as much as possible, but we also have to be mindful that a lot of states really rely on this revenue, and we have to be mindful of that as well.
Thank you, Matt. A little smaller question, a little shorter question. How would a compact affect our scope of practice?
Yeah, and this is another very common question. So I talked about this during the presentation. So just to reiterate this, the compact does not affect scope of practice at all. So all of the licensure compacts specify that in order to participate in the compact, you have to agree to abide by all of the laws and rules of the state in which you are practicing. So let's just say, as an example, I'm a dietitian and I live in the state of Georgia, and I want to practice across state lines in the state of Florida, and I'm using the compact to do so. While I'm in Florida, I've got to abide by all of Florida's laws and rules that govern the practice of dietetics. And if there's certain things that I'm allowed to do in my home state of Georgia that I'm not allowed to do in Florida, I've got to know that, and I've got to abide by that remote state's laws and rules that govern the practice in the state of Florida. And so it doesn't impact scope of practice from the state's perspective. From the licensee's perspective, it is a little bit of an extra burden on the licensee to have to go and figure out the scope of practice in the remote state where they're working. And certainly compact commissions have information that is helpful to licensees to help them navigate if there's significant differences in scope of practice across state lines. But it's incumbent upon the practitioner to know what they're allowed to do and not do when they're using the compact in a remote state.
Our next question, how will the interstate compact impact licensure requirements?
Yeah, so for this question, every compact establishes a baseline set of requirements in order to join the compact and use the compact. So in all of these licensure compacts, there's a section that's specific for the state. It says, here's what the state has to have in place in order to join the compact. And then for the licensee, here's what the licensee has to have in place to join the compact. And oftentimes there are things in these sections related to exams, education, certifications that may be required by states. And so these are what we call the uniform licensing requirements that are all the states are agreeing to by joining the compact. And I'll say that is not to say that a state can't go and have alternative pathways to licensure and still be a member of the compact. The compact doesn't dictate that at all. It just says, here's what you have to have in place in order to join the compact. And then as a licensee, here's what you have to have satisfied. A certain degree or hours of education or an exam or something like that. If a state wants to go and say, we're going to have a pathway to licensure that requires less or requires more than what's in the compact, every state is still able to do that. But in order to use the compact, they have to agree to those uniform licensing requirements that are laid out in the compact. So a state still retains their ability to do whatever they want with their single state license, but in order to join the compact, there is a baseline threshold that states have to meet and that licensees have to meet. And in terms of dietetics, I'm sure the Academy will be helpful to us in navigating what those licensing requirements are, the prevalent ones in states that could potentially be included in the compact, but none of those conversations or decisions have happened yet. And so I know that's probably a question that is pressing on people's mind is, what am I going to have to do to use the compact? I'll say that compacts always align with licensing requirements that are currently in the state. So it's not going to be something that's way higher. It's not going to be something that's way lower. Compacts thrive on uniformity, and we go to where the uniformity is. And so wherever there's uniformity amongst states in terms of requirements, that's probably what is going to be dictated in the compact.
Matt? Would this create one national licensure and eliminate state by state licensure?
Yeah, good question. And the answer, and hopefully this is clear from the presentation, but the answer is no. This is not creating a national dietitian license. This is what we call a mutual recognition compact. And by mutual recognition, what we're saying is that states are signing up to agree to accept each other's licenses. So I'm licensed in one state and another state is going to agree to allow me to practice there. They're recognizing my state's license. So this is not creating some sort of omnibus national dietetics license, but this is a agreement that states are choosing to join to say that, yes, I'm signing up to recognize all of these other states' licenses as being sufficient to practice in my state. So the answer to this question is no. We're keeping the authority with the states and giving the states the ability to establish scope of practice and licensing requirements. Like we've said numerous times so far, none of that is impacted.
Did I read correctly? And this is something we've touched on, but a good point to revisit again. Did I read correctly that the current effort is focused on military dietitians only?
Yeah, and so hopefully this is clear. I think I addressed this in the Q&A, but this compact is not for military spouses only. So the Department of Defense is funding this initiative, but they have graciously acknowledged that by developing something for the profession at large, that the military spouse population will benefit also. And so they're allowing these compacts to be developed for the general licensee population. Although I will say there is a section in every compact that is specific to military spouses and does provide military spouses with some additional benefit because of how highly mobile they are. But these compacts are not specifically for military spouses. They are for the entire licensee population.
And here we've got a few more. We've got the resources from the Academy once again to share with you all. I know they have a group that's very open and loves practitioner participation. So just wanted to share that with you all again. And we know they'll be a great partner on this project. So we're looking forward to that. And then here is our contact information, Matt and I. And then you can also go to our website, compacts@csg.org, for more information. And we know we have a lot of good information there. And you can see the web pages on multiple compacts on that page. But that concludes today's presentation. I want to thank everyone for joining with us. And just to reiterate how excited we are to start this process with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and to get a compact rolling for the profession. And we know how big of an impact we can have on everyone. So thank you all for joining, and please stay in touch with us as we go forth on this process. Thank you all.
Hey, thanks everyone. I really appreciated the opportunity to be here. Hey, Matt, do you have a few minutes? Do you want me to give you a call, or do you have time to chat?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to just call you?
That works. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your help with this. I think it's going to be
Absolutely.
terrific. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ellen.
Ellen, thank you. Great presentation.
Thanks.